She thought she had found love with a powerful older man, but just 2 months later, her car was abandoned on a dark roadside, a hidden journal exposed terrifying secrets, and investigators uncovered a mystery far bigger than anyone imagined. What really happened to 20-year-old Emily Hale, and why did her final warning say, "The truth is bigger than everyone thinks"? Daniel Mercer had spent nearly 20 years building his construction company in a quiet suburb outside Chicago. At 48, he was known as the kind of man who arrived before sunrise, shook every employee's hand, and remembered the names of their children. To outsiders, his life looked steady and respectable. He lived in a large brick home near the edge of town, drove the same dark pickup for years, and rarely missed a community event. But behind the calm image was a man carrying a deep loneliness that had quietly grown after his divorce 3 years earlier. Most evenings, Daniel stayed late at the office long after his workers had gone home, pretending paperwork mattered more than the silence waiting for him at home. One of Daniel's most trusted employees was Victor Hale, a hard-working foreman who had worked beside him for nearly a decade. Victor was dependable, practical, and fiercely protective of his family. He often talked about his daughter, Emily, a bright 20-year-old college student studying photography in Milwaukee. Victor proudly showed co-workers her pictures whenever she won contests or completed projects. Emily had a natural eye for capturing emotion in ordinary places. Her photos of abandoned diners, rainy streets, and small-town festivals carried a quiet beauty that impressed everyone who saw them. Daniel listened politely whenever Victor spoke about her, never imagining their lives would soon become dangerously connected. That summer, Victor invited several co-workers to a backyard barbecue for his birthday. Daniel almost declined, claiming he had work to finish, but Victor insisted. Late that Saturday afternoon, Daniel arrived carrying a small gift basket, and expecting nothing more than grilled food and casual conversation. The backyard buzzed with laughter, country music drifted from outdoor speakers, and children chased each other across the grass while adults gathered around picnic tables. Then Daniel noticed Emily standing near the patio railing with a camera hanging from her shoulder. She was laughing as she adjusted the lens, trying to photograph her younger cousins without them noticing. Sunlight caught the edges of her brown hair while she focused carefully on each shot. For a moment, Daniel simply watched from a distance, surprised by the confidence and calmness she carried. Victor eventually introduced them. Emily shook Daniel's hand politely and thanked him for employing her father all these years. Unlike most people her age, she spoke with unusual maturity. She asked questions about architecture, construction sites, and how cities changed over time. Daniel found himself drawn into the conversation far longer than he expected. When she explained her dream of creating a photography series about forgotten American towns, Daniel listened with genuine fascination. Before the evening ended, Emily asked if she could photograph one of the company's older renovation projects for a college portfolio. Daniel agreed immediately. Over the following weeks, Emily visited several construction sites with permission from both her father and Daniel. At first, everything appeared harmless. She spent hours photographing rusted staircases, unfinished hallways, and workers repairing historic buildings. Daniel often walked beside her, explaining the history of certain locations, or sharing stories about how neighborhoods had changed over the years. Their conversations slowly shifted beyond work. Emily spoke about wanting a bigger life beyond small-town expectations, while Daniel admitted he sometimes felt trapped by routine and regret. The age difference between them remained impossible to ignore, yet their connection deepened in ways neither fully acknowledged aloud. Victor noticed the growing closeness almost immediately. At first, he brushed it aside, believing his daughter simply admired Daniel as a successful businessman. But small details began troubling him. Emily mentioned Daniel constantly at dinner. She defended him whenever anyone criticized wealthy business owners. Some evenings she returned home smiling after site visits that lasted far longer than expected. Victor's wife, Laura, sensed the tension too. She warned Victor not to overreact, insisting Emily was an adult capable of making her own decisions. Still, Victor could not shake the uneasy feeling growing in his chest. One rainy evening in early September, Daniel invited Emily to a quiet restaurant outside town after a photography session downtown. He told himself it was only dinner, only conversation, only two people escaping loneliness for a few hours. But the atmosphere between them had already changed. Candlelight reflected softly across the windows while thunder rolled outside. Emily admitted she felt understood around him in ways she never experienced with people her own age. Daniel hesitated before confessing he felt alive again whenever she was near. Neither spoke for several seconds after that. The silence itself seemed to confirm everything they had both been trying to avoid. When Victor eventually learned about the relationship, the reaction was explosive. He confronted Daniel inside the company warehouse before sunrise, furious that the man he trusted most had crossed a line he believed never should have been crossed. Workers arriving that morning heard shouting echo through the building. Victor accused Daniel of manipulating someone far younger and inexperienced, while Daniel insisted their feelings were genuine and mutual. The argument ended with Victor throwing his company badge onto the floor and walking out. News spread quickly through town. Some people whispered that Emily was chasing money and stability. Others claimed Daniel was going through a late-life crisis. Friends stopped inviting him to gatherings. Employees became uncomfortable around him. Even Emily's closest friends struggled to understand the relationship. But despite the judgment surrounding them, Daniel and Emily refused to separate. If anything, the pressure pushed them closer together. Then, only 2 months after the relationship became public, something happened that shattered the entire town. On a cold November morning, police vehicles surrounded a wooded area just outside the county highway after a passing driver reported an abandoned car near the trees. The vehicle belonged to Emily Hale. By sunset, rumors had spread through every neighborhood, diner, and grocery store in town. Reporters began gathering near the scene while investigators blocked off the road with yellow barriers. Victor and Laura sat inside their home waiting for answers that seemed to grow more terrifying with every passing hour. Daniel repeatedly called Emily's phone, but every attempt went unanswered. And as darkness settled across the small Illinois town, investigators uncovered evidence that transformed a controversial romance into something far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. The discovery of Emily Hale's abandoned car sent a wave of fear through the entire county. News crews crowded outside the sheriff's department before sunrise the next morning, broadcasting live reports beside flashing patrol lights, while residents gathered in coffee shops trying to piece together rumors from incomplete information. The silver sedan had been found nearly 15 miles outside town on an isolated road surrounded by dense woods and empty farmland. One door had been left slightly open, and investigators spent hours carefully examining the area while helicopters circled overhead. Authorities revealed very little publicly, but whispers spread fast. Some people claimed there had been signs of a struggle. Others insisted Emily had simply run away to escape public attention. Nobody knew what to believe. Inside the Hale family home, the atmosphere became unbearable. Victor had barely slept since police arrived at his door during the night. He blamed himself repeatedly for not forcing Emily to end the relationship months earlier. Laura tried desperately to remain hopeful, convincing herself their daughter would walk through the front door at any moment with some explanation that would make everything normal again. But every passing hour without contact deepened the panic. Emily's phone remained inactive. Her social media accounts suddenly stopped updating. Friends from college admitted they had not heard from her in days. Daniel Mercer became the center of suspicion almost immediately. Reporters parked outside his property. Online discussions exploded with accusations and speculation. To many outsiders, the story already sounded suspicious enough. A wealthy older businessman involved with a much younger woman, who had now mysteriously disappeared. Investigators questioned Daniel for hours at the sheriff's office. He cooperated fully, answering every question calmly despite the growing pressure surrounding him. He explained that he and Emily had argued several days earlier about the constant public judgment they faced. Emily had become emotionally exhausted by strangers staring at her in restaurants, anonymous messages online, and endless criticism from people who believed they understood her life better than she did. According to Daniel, she needed space and had driven away after the argument to clear her head. But detectives quickly noticed inconsistencies in the timeline. Security footage from a gas station outside town showed Emily's car late at night heading toward the wooded highway, where it was eventually discovered. More importantly, another vehicle appeared several minutes behind her. The footage was blurry due to rain, but investigators believed the second vehicle resembled Daniel's dark pickup truck. Detectives returned to question him again. Daniel insisted he had gone looking for Emily because he was worried about her emotional state, but he claimed he lost sight of her vehicle during heavy rain and eventually returned home. Without clearer evidence, investigators could not challenge his explanation directly, yet suspicion around him intensified dramatically. Meanwhile, reporters uncovered details that turned the story into a national obsession. Emily had reportedly confided in several friends that she sometimes felt trapped inside the relationship. One college classmate told journalists that Emily feared her entire identity had become tied to controversy instead of her photography career. Another claimed Emily recently mentioned wanting to leave town permanently and start over somewhere nobody recognized her. Those statements painted a far more complicated picture than the romantic story Daniel had described publicly. As investigators dug deeper, they discovered increasing tension between Daniel and Victor during the weeks before Emily vanished. Employees at the construction company described heated arguments behind closed office doors. One worker admitted hearing Victor threaten to destroy Daniel if Emily ever got hurt. Detectives now faced two competing possibilities. Some believed Daniel had become possessive and unstable after realizing Emily wanted distance from him. Others wondered whether Victor's anger toward Daniel had escalated into something darker, after months of humiliation and resentment. The town itself became divided into opposing camps. Some residents defended Daniel, arguing that public hatred and relentless gossip had unfairly targeted the couple from the beginning. Others became convinced he was hiding something terrible behind his calm public image. Restaurants, barber shops, and grocery store lines turned into endless debates about the case. Everyone seemed certain they knew the truth despite having almost no verified facts. 3 days after Emily disappeared, investigators made another disturbing discovery. A search team combing through woods near the abandoned car located Emily's camera bag hidden beneath wet leaves near a shallow creek. Inside were memory cards containing hundreds of photographs from the previous several weeks. Most images were ordinary: empty streets, abandoned buildings, sunsets over train tracks. But detectives noticed a strange pattern in the newest photos. Many focused on the same unfamiliar man appearing repeatedly in the background. Sometimes he stood far away near parking lots or sidewalks. In another image, he appeared reflected faintly in a diner window behind Emily. At first glance the figure seemed accidental, but the repetition unsettled investigators immediately. The mystery deepened further when technicians enhanced one of the clearer images. The unknown man appeared middle-aged, wearing a dark baseball cap and heavy jacket. Nobody recognized him. Suddenly the investigation changed direction completely. Detectives began considering the possibility that someone else had been watching Emily long before she vanished. Reporters seized on the revelation instantly, turning the case into a frenzy of speculation about stalking, obsession, and hidden secrets. The sheriff publicly urged residents not to spread rumors online, but the warnings accomplished little. Amateur investigators flooded discussion forums with theories. Some blamed Daniel. Others suspected Victor. A few became convinced the unidentified man held the key to everything. Daniel's emotional state also began changing under pressure. Friends noticed he looked exhausted and increasingly paranoid. He stopped going to the office regularly and rarely left home except for police interviews. One evening, a television crew filmed him losing his temper outside his driveway after reporters repeatedly shouted questions about Emily's disappearance. The footage spread nationwide within hours, damaging public opinion against him even more. Then investigators uncovered information that shocked both families. Emily had secretly rented a small storage unit on the outskirts of town nearly 6 weeks earlier. Nobody, not her parents, not Daniel, not her closest friends, knew it existed. Detectives obtained access and opened the unit late Friday evening under police supervision. Inside they found photography equipment, journals, old maps, and several sealed envelopes labeled with dates. One envelope contained printed screenshots of anonymous messages Emily had received online. Most were cruel insults about her relationship with Daniel. But mixed among them were several deeply unsettling notes from someone claiming to know what really happens to girls who trust the wrong men. At the bottom of the box, investigators discovered something even more alarming. A handwritten journal entry from Emily dated only 4 days before she vanished. In shaky handwriting, she wrote that she believed someone had been following her for weeks. She admitted she initially suspected reporters or angry locals, but recently she became convinced the person was getting closer. According to the journal, she no longer felt safe driving alone at night. The final sentence stopped detectives cold. "If something happens to me, the truth is bigger than everyone thinks." The discovery of Emily Hale's journal transformed the investigation from a controversial missing person case into a growing nightmare that seemed to uncover new secrets every day. Detectives spent the entire weekend reviewing the contents of the storage unit, while reporters camped outside the sheriff's department waiting for updates. The journal entry spread fear across the community because it suggested Emily had been living with anxiety long before she vanished. Suddenly, the public narrative changed again. What initially appeared to be a troubled relationship surrounded by gossip now carried the possibility that someone unknown had been quietly watching her for weeks. Investigators expanded their search beyond Daniel Mercer and the Hale family. They began tracing Emily's recent movements in detail, reviewing traffic cameras, restaurant receipts, gas station footage, and phone records from the month leading up to her disappearance. What they uncovered painted the picture of a young woman growing increasingly isolated. Emily had stopped attending several college classes. Friends noticed she often changed plans at the last minute, or avoided going out alone after dark. One friend revealed that Emily recently asked if she could borrow pepper spray, though she never explained why. Another said Emily constantly checked over her shoulder whenever they walked through parking lots. At the time, everyone assumed the pressure from public criticism was simply becoming too much for her. Now, those small details seemed far more disturbing. Daniel Mercer remained under intense scrutiny. Detectives executed a search warrant at his home early Monday morning while news helicopters circled overhead. Officers searched computers, financial records, and vehicles while neighbors watched from behind curtains. Daniel cooperated publicly, but investigators noticed cracks beginning to form beneath his calm appearance. During another interview, detectives confronted him about Emily's journal entry mentioning fear and mistrust. Daniel admitted their relationship had become strained in recent weeks. According to him, Emily had grown distant and emotionally overwhelmed by the attention surrounding them. He claimed she sometimes accused him of being too controlling, especially when he worried about her traveling alone late at night. Daniel insisted he only wanted to protect her, but investigators pressed harder when they discovered dozens of unanswered calls he made to Emily during the final hours before she disappeared. Meanwhile, Victor Hale's anger evolved into something heavier and more dangerous. He spent nearly every waking hour searching for answers himself, driving through rural roads and questioning people around town who might have seen Emily recently. Friends worried about his mental state as exhaustion and guilt consumed him. Victor blamed Daniel for bringing chaos into their daughter's life, but privately he also blamed himself for not recognizing how frightened Emily had become. Laura watched helplessly as her husband's obsession with finding the truth slowly pushed him toward collapse. Then another shocking revelation emerged. Detectives discovered Emily had secretly met with a local investigative reporter named Rachel Bennett less than a week before disappearing. Rachel told police that Emily requested complete confidentiality during their meeting. According to Rachel, Emily claimed she had uncovered information involving Daniel's construction company that made her deeply uncomfortable. Emily reportedly believed certain renovation contracts connected to the business were hiding illegal financial activity. She did not provide proof during the meeting, but she promised she was gathering evidence through photographs and documents. Rachel admitted she initially assumed Emily was exaggerating out of emotional stress, and never published anything about the claims. The investigation immediately widened. Authorities began examining Daniel's company finances, while federal investigators quietly joined portions of the case behind the scenes. Rumors spread rapidly through town that the business had connections to corrupt developers and fraudulent property deals. Employees were questioned. Office computers were seized. Suddenly Daniel Mercer was not only a man suspected in a disappearance, but also a businessman facing possible criminal investigations unrelated to Emily herself. Daniel denied everything. He insisted Emily misunderstood ordinary financial records and became paranoid after weeks of pressure and harassment. But detectives noticed another troubling inconsistency. The night Emily disappeared, Daniel had deleted several phone messages from his device before investigators first questioned him. Technicians eventually recovered fragments of those conversations. In one partially restored message, Emily appeared upset and demanded to know how far this really goes. Another message included Daniel repeatedly telling her to stop asking questions over the phone. The tension surrounding the case exploded nationwide after those details leaked to the media. Television programs dedicated entire nightly segments to the mystery. Some portrayed Daniel as a manipulative businessman hiding dark secrets behind his respectable image. Others argued Emily had become emotionally overwhelmed and accidentally placed herself in danger while investigating something she barely understood. Public fascination grew more intense by the hour. But the most terrifying development came 3 days later. A waitress at a roadside diner nearly 70 miles away contacted authorities after recognizing Emily from television reports. She claimed Emily visited the diner alone shortly after midnight on the night she vanished. According to the waitress, Emily appeared nervous and repeatedly looked toward the windows as if expecting someone to arrive. She ordered coffee but barely touched it. Most importantly, the waitress remembered Emily speaking briefly with an older man seated in a corner booth. Their conversation looked tense. After several minutes, Emily suddenly left the diner in a hurry. Security footage confirmed Emily had indeed been there. Even more alarming, investigators identified the man from the diner footage as the same unidentified figure appearing repeatedly in Emily's photographs. The mystery man was finally real. Detectives released a public request for information, while analysts worked desperately to identify him. The grainy footage showed a man in his late 50s with grey hair beneath a dark cap. He never looked directly toward the camera, yet his presence changed everything. Whoever he was, he had crossed paths with Emily only hours before she disappeared. As investigators raced to uncover his identity, another piece of evidence surfaced from inside Emily's storage unit that had initially been overlooked. Hidden inside a photography textbook was a flash drive. Technicians opened it late Thursday evening expecting more photographs. Instead, they found dozens of files containing contracts, payment records, and emails connected to Daniel Mercer's company. Some documents suggested money had been transferred through shell businesses connected to abandoned renovation sites across multiple states. Other files included photographs Emily secretly captured during site visits, images of late-night meetings, unfamiliar trucks arriving after hours, and sealed crates being unloaded into condemned buildings. But one video file froze the entire investigation. The shaky recording, apparently captured secretly on Emily's camera from inside her car, showed Daniel arguing violently with an unidentified older man in a parking garage 2 weeks before she disappeared. Their voices echoed through the concrete structure as rain hammered outside. The man warned Daniel that the girl already knows too much. Daniel shouted back that Emily was not supposed to be involved at all. Then the recording ended abruptly. By sunrise the following morning, investigators finally identified the mystery man from the diner and photographs. His name was Leonard Voss. And according to federal records, he had once been connected to a decades-old financial corruption case involving missing funds, intimidation, and the unexplained disappearance of another young woman nearly 20 years earlier.